Welcome to Redefining Normal. Join us as we question conventional thinking and talk about the courage it takes to create and live a deliciously vibrant life.
This podcast is for people who know there's a better way to do life and love, how we show up in connection to others, our kids, our partners, our business, and beyond that, our relationship with money, vitality, and more than anything, ourselves.
We're two shamelessly unapologetic moms choosing to experience the fullness of life.
And we're collapsing the conditioning that says you can't live a life of pleasure, peace, and abundance in the midst of the mundane of life responsibilities, work, and kids.
Are you ready? Let's do this. This week, Jamie and I are super excited to have a conversation with you about something that might sound a little bit boring, but I think is really freaking important, which is attachment styles. But we're really wanting to kind of hone in on secure attachment and what that is. Some of you may have heard this before. Some of you may not have heard this before. So we're going to kind of take you through this and the importance of this and why we're having a conversation about it right now. So I'll start and say why we're having the conversation now, and then we'll take you through this process. Because
I would love for you to share what you like, how you define it, what it means to you.
Attachment,
secure attachment. Yeah.
Okay. First, let me just share why we're talking about this, and then we'll get into the details and the nitty gritties. So basically what's going on for me right now is, for those of you, I don't know if we've even talked about it, that there's been a breakup from the mystery guy that we've been talking about. And it's been a really intense process because it was really shocking. And we're now at a place where, interestingly enough, we have found our way through to be able to move through in a friendship. And it has taken every ounce of my soul to really work through this on an internal level. And so the reason I'm talking about this is because this was about attachment. So attachment is when we really get into connecting with another human, right? And it can be other than humans too, when we get out of this, this experience, but we connect to another human, and there can be attachment styles that are not actually healthy. So basically it's based on from the way we were with our parents, whether our parents left us or abandoned us or overcuddled us, or all these different ways that we have attached or not attached to a parental figure in life or a person who played as a parent in life. And then how does that play out later on in our relationships, we'll just call it for here, our relationships, right? Yeah. And so for me right now, as I'm going through this journey, as we separate, it's about coming back into this wholeness with myself and creating a deeper level of sovereignty in myself. And Jamie and I were just talking right before, because Jamie has some really freaking amazing embodiment things. And I was like, okay, Jamie, I'm at this place right now. I've made it this far, but I'm still feeling really dysregulated in my nervous system, which is how, when we have an anxious experience, because we're attached to a human on an anxious level, right? It can feel really dysregulating and uncomfortable. Plus, there was this very fast separation. So I'm just moving through like the separation in and of itself, right? And so now I'm like working on, how do I come back into my body in a better way and hold myself and be able to stay in peace within myself, because that's an us job. Right. And so this is how this conversation started. This is where we're at. Jamie, do you want to add into attachment? Do you want to have anything to say? Because I've just...
No, I mean, I'm not an expert by any means on like attachment theory and attachment styles. I kind of vaguely or high level know about, anxious attachment and what that looks like, and avoidant. Yep. And how oftentimes they end up together. Kyle and I were very much so that. I was the anxious one. He was the avoidant. And it's interesting because then when I go avoidant, he gets anxious. And, it's a polarity thing, and you kind of need both to play that dynamic and create the tension that feels familiar in our nervous system. Like Carrie was saying, if you had, a parent that, created those dynamics with you as a child, then they feel familiar and safe in your body. So you look to create them in your romantic relationships or friendship relationships or whatever relationships you've got going on. An anxious attachment, from my understanding, tends to be leaned way forward, right? Like I need a lot of time. I need a lot of energy. I need a lot of
reassurance.
We
want text messages, communication.
Yeah. Like continual connection.
Mm-hmm.
And then avoidant wants their own space, wants, like doesn't want to have to give or receive that.
They want freedom.
Wants, kind of oftentimes is what's the commitment phobic is like oftentimes the label that
would look like
can come with that.
Right.
And oftentimes those two people find each other and,
push each other's buttons and then end up
create attachment, right, to the dynamic, and oftentimes relatively toxic dynamics in that relationship. So, and I know that, I mean, like I said, that was Kyle and I for a good chunk of our marriage, and not that we aren't that way ever now, but we are aware when I'm getting anxious or avoidant, and it's like we're aware that we're navigating and moving through the various ways that we're showing up for each other. So.
Yeah, Hugh and I were the same. I'm anxious and he's avoidant.
Yeah,
and I think I want to say here to anyone who's listening, if you haven't heard this before, these things, it's like, ultimately, I don't think they ever fully go away. I just think that you learn how to be in relationship with them and support each other with love. Right. So there's certain things that is an anxious attachment that it's just like, it becomes a normal part of relating to the extent that the other person is willing to like meet you. Right. And you can always ask for your needs to be met. Yeah. And then you can always find your way through things. And I think also, the more that we start to learn, like Jamie and I, both are at the place of, I can be aware of when I'm being very anxious. Like, I'm like, ooh, I feel that, Carrie. And I don't have to do the thing, right? I can hold myself. And this is where we start to come into this place of the secure attachment, right? So that we can both notice and go, yeah, that's your anxious attachment, Carrie. Yeah. And you can even call it, like, sometimes I'll even say to my, like a partner, right? Like, I'm feeling really anxious right now because of, can you reassure this? Right. Yeah. And it's not then coming in this like needy, and if they don't, whatever, like, it's not being like, you're this person, blah, 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 nah, 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 I need this. And then we're not hooking into each other's energy. And it's like, we can take responsibility. Yeah. And sometimes even in those places, like, I know when I've become into anxious moments, I'm like, just hold yourself, Carrie. Like, you don't need that. Right. And the more that we do that, on either side of this, whether it's on the anxious side, because, I experience this, or the avoidance side where we want to run, because definitely with my partners, like sometimes like it goes, all right, well, he wants to run. I want to over communicate. Where's the middle ground? Right. Or they want to run and you want to run, but it's like, no, we got to sit at the table and figure this out. Right. And so we start to look at these places where we're playing into these patterns, and we can choose into different ways of doing it. Yeah. And it starts with our own journey with ourselves in choosing to have this awareness, right? Like, if you guys, again, neither Jamie nor I are experts in this. We are just humans who are on the path.
And I think too, it's important to remember it's a theory. And incomplete, like there's lots of different ways this can show up. And like, if you identify with anxious, look at where you're avoidant. Like, what arenas are you actually like, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to commit to this. I don't want to. Because like in my romantic relationship, I was anxious mostly when I felt he was avoidant. Then I wanted to like lean in and force connection. But then there are lots of arenas where I'm just avoidant and don't want to talk about it, don't want to look at it, don't want to commit to something, don't want to have the conversation, whatever that is. So, like you can start to understand your partner when you can see where you do that thing and what drives it in you as well.
I think as well, like just having the awareness, because there's times when in any intimate relationship, I can go both ways. Like, if you push 100%. Me enough, I'm going to fucking avoid in a billion ways. Yeah. Right. And then I think when you know that, like, I know even with my ex, this last partner, like we could actually get to the place where I was like, if I'm in this place and you see me do this, it's because I went into a freeze state. And in my freeze state, I'm not going to be able to communicate with you unless you actually do these things. Yeah. Right. I'm like, it's not because I don't want to, it's not because whatever, but like I'm in a total freeze state. And so then you can also start to learn, how do you be in relationship to support each other to be able to communicate at your best. Yeah. So I think, and like Jamie said, I think this is really important to note, that it's like, there is no like perfection in this, or there is no, like, it's not the be all end all, but I do think it helps to actually have that awareness, because it's not just in our relationships. Like, I would have an anxious attachment to money. I would have, like these are these places you can look at your money, you can look at your health, you can look at your own relationship with yourself and where you're doing the same damn thing with yourself.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Right. And so it can really help. So right now I'm really curious to know, Jamie, because like she said, like we're like, nervous system. Can we just talk nervous system embodiment things and how we can actually settle when we have these experiences because I'm talking about shock in my body, right? And I'm also talking about coming home to self. And I think, first of all, both things can happen regardless of, it was a breakup, but like, regardless of the situation, we have this. And also, you don't need shock for it to happen, right? Like our nervous systems can get totally dysregulated. And we are also can be very, again, this anxious avoidant attachment. So even in a marriage, 20 years on, if your nervous system is still going, because mine was 17 years into a marriage, mine was way worse than it is now. Well, okay. In this moment, it's pretty intense, but generally speaking, right? So like, these are these things that we can really look at and say, how do we come back home and settle this? So go on, tell me some things. Help me out here. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I guess it depends on where you're at in your journey. I mean, like for you, oftentimes just slowing down, right? Yeah. Who was it? Kelly Greeno just did like a reel the other day and she was like, pro parenting tip. And she was just walking along at a pace. And then she's like, slow down, like brush your teeth slower, walk slower, talk slower. It creates that space for response instead of reactivity. The somatics of like breath work is miraculous in a lot of ways, as well as it's interesting because it's like you need to follow the sensations in your body, but your mind has to be a part of the process. Because oftentimes we can make the mistake of like over intellectualizing things and getting into the story, getting into the but why, and because my dad and because my mom and because like whatever, and we have left our body in that. But if we can follow the story that's creating the anxiety or the avoidance and feel the sensations that are coming up in our body, right? It takes practice to do that.
It does.
To engage the mind and not let it run away with the story, So it's like, let it guide the awareness of the sensations that are showing up internally, and then to be able to move those to it's like an acclimation or a integration. What were you used a word earlier? Like it's a capacity thing, it's like your nervous system is literally like, I don't know what to do with this. It's like a wire that's running too much energy through it that wants to short circuit.
Yes.
And that we can slowly and intentionally increase our capacity for what needs to move through us. So, like when we move our bodies, like animals, they shake off.
I love it. Oh my God. It's been by the way, for those of you listening, I have been obsessively loving going to play parties here that are like, they're not sex play parties. They're like, we get primal and play. Yeah. And it is so fucking delicious to meet another human in a safe space. And I'm saying this because like we have play parties here to do this because I'm a single person and this is something I'm doing right now to actually like literally what you're saying to move this energy out of my body. And it's so amazing to meet another human in like fierce ferociousness. That you're like, let's go, right?
Yeah. Where else do we do that in life ever? Like most people do not have a space where they can rage, where they can scream, where they can punch hard. It's like
bite.
It doesn't exist,
And actually, so this is what I'm saying. So like you guys can invite, like I invite you, even if you can look in your areas, like I know I'm in Denver and it's a Boulder area and we have got all this kind of stuff and it's a really fucking wicked place to live for this. But look in your areas. You might find it. If you want, reach out to one of us. We might know people in your area that can lead you into these paths. But even still, like just wrestle with your partner if you've got a partner, right? Like, and it doesn't, like get into those primal places because far out. It feels so good.
And be aware that it might bring stuff up, so I, when I was little, my stepdad would like hold me down and tickle me. And so like the first couple times, whatever, that I would wrestle and Kyle would hold me down, I would feel so much rage. And I'm like, oh, it's not Kyle. He's bringing up somatic memories that I have not fully processed. So like, it isn't always a pleasant release. Sometimes it will bring stuff up that's really uncomfortable, but in allowing it to come up and to be felt and to move through means that you're no longer holding it in your body and trying to navigate normal and be like calm and be centered and have this regulated nervous system while it's trying to hold this trauma that you just haven't acknowledged, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's an interesting experience to have those things move through.
I think on that note, I want to add here, because I did say go and do this, but I think to add a safety piece, if you're going to allow yourself the fullness of this, right?
Yeah.
If you really truly allow yourself the fullness of this release and you actually have another human in your space that can meet you in this and who's willing to like go in the wrestle, to go into the primal play, to go into being with you in that space.
Yeah.
And like, you don't have to be deeply spirit. Like my ex did it with me. Hugh did it with me. My ex-husband would wrestle and get me like, yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But there's some really great safety things that you can use, which are like in Tantra, they use a speed light, red, yellow, and green. And so the green is like, go, like, let's go. We're fucking gonna go at this and have fun and primally at it. Yellow is like, you've hit a point to me where I'm getting to the point of uncomfortable.
Yeah, something's moving.
Stop. Like something's moving. You've triggered something. I'm not sure where I'm at. Slow the fuck down. Right. Yeah. And red is stop right fucking here. Right. Yeah. And so if you've been triggered, then you get to have those say, because sometimes there's going to be nothing else that can come out of your mouth in these moments. And it gives you a safe way to play. Right. And so you can actually get ferocious. Like even if it gets too hard, right. Like if you guys are wrestling and it gets too hard, you're like, hey, that's an 11, like that's a yellow, stop. Hey, still here. Right. And so you have a way of communicating.
And that's a great way to communicate with somebody who isn't aware of. I know that like the first couple of times that, and even for me, like the first couple of times, not even just physically, but emotionally, things would get triggered. Yeah. And all of a sudden I would be angry at Kyle and he's like, I don't even know what I did, you know, and it had nothing to do with him, but it was bringing up my own stuff. And it was through learning somatics and healing work and mindset work and all of that I started to realize, oh my gosh, I'm literally projecting my trauma. He's playing the, you know, placeholder for the story. That has nothing to do with him. And so when we both started to recognize that, it allowed us to step out of, you know, the attachment dynamics we were running. Yeah, totally. So yeah. But animals, like when they have conflict, they shake off the adrenaline, you know, and humans don't do that. It's one of my favorite. Your body, shake your hips, shake. My favorite. Like you'll see me shaking pretty much every day somewhere in my day. Yeah. And like it's interesting because some of the things that you would say as well, like breath work. So for me, quantum flow is my way of doing this in my practice that I use and I teach with my clients as well. In that there's so many ways, and like stomping your feet too can be a really great grounding way to get your stuff out of your body. Something that you said earlier too, by the way, that I wanted to add into, you had said earlier something about the stories in your mind and letting them lead into your body. Yeah. And the thing that I just wanted to add an extra piece to that, because it's something that I've really been working with over the last year. It's been a really important part of my process because I'm a heady story person, and Jamie is often pulling me out of the story. Carrie. That's a fucking story. That's the shadow of my life's work, is intellectualizing things. So it's like I'm very familiar with the mind's capacity to take us on a journey that is nonsense. It doesn't actually fucking help anybody, right? No. So it's been part of my journey. And so one of the things I actually ask myself when I get really into the story, and I can notice, just like Jamie said, I notice that my body gets this, I'm going to call it anxiety, but really it is just energy that's moving. Yep. Right. There is a lot of energy that is in my body that needs to be released ultimately, or paid attention to, or moved in some way, shape, or form. Right. And so the thing that I'll often think of, I'm like, oh, notice this right here. So what's the story? Does it really matter what the story is? And this is what Jamie said, but I want to bring this into a really clear point here. It doesn't really matter what the story said. You just go, okay, where is the story in my body? Exactly. And then where it is in your, right? What sensation is this creating? And then what is it that I need to do to move this out? And it sometimes takes a while. the mind will keep trying. The mind will keep like, yeah, but this happened. Yeah, but he said, yeah, but you haven't.
And then you go back to.
And then you're right back out of your body. I did this last week, 2 weeks ago. Kyle and I don't know, like we were disagreeing on something, and we went our separate ways, did our thing. It wasn't anything major. And my body felt fine, like sensation wise. I was like over it, nothing. My mind was like, we haven't talked about that thing. He hasn't apologized for that thing, or we haven't decided whatever. And I'm like, wow, my mind is literally trying to take my body out of contentment. Fine. Like, let's just move on. And it's like, no, we need to fight about this. We need to have conflict. We need to sort it. We need to whatever. And I'm like, wow, like she keeps trying to pull me into a story and a dynamic that really doesn't exist. It doesn't have to exist. And my mind is literally creating conflict that does not sensationally exist in my body. And she's powerful. That's like the process of kind of training your mind to not run away, because oftentimes that happens and we're like, oh yeah, wait a second. We didn't resolve this conflict. It's like so easy to go into the story and to stay there. And being able to detach from it, being able to recognize this is just thoughts. This is just story.
It's also interesting because, since we started this on attachment, like hearing you say that to me is really what I'm starting to pay attention to a lot in my mind. Is where do I give my mind space to other people? Because now I'm attaching to something, or I'm thinking about, or I'm even projecting, or like sometimes I even think like if I'm trying to work this out and figure this out with them in the space of in between, it's actually hooking into their energy. Yeah. Right. It's actually like, wow, like how does that feel? Yeah. Right. Or am I being respectful? And so like, it's even like, okay, is that respectful to even be considering? Like you're trying to forward project something that you couldn't possibly fucking know. So shut your mind up.
It doesn't even exist, right? Like literally, I'm making up some pretend.
Yeah. It's just so interesting, right? But it's part of, to me, it is part of that attachment, because we're trying to find an attachment to something to solve a problem for ourselves, to feel better in our bodies. But really what it has to come down to is to come back into our bodies. I know I'm saying this because at some point this is going to be a clip and I'm going to hear it. I'm going to go, I need
exactly when you need it. You're talking to a future self. But it's true. So think about this. Like we create story, and then we explore all the versions of that story in order to feel prepared for what could potentially happen. Yeah. Creating all kinds of conflict, all kinds of potential outcomes that do not
Jamie
exist.
calls me on this regularly.
They don't exist. So it's like, just go in with the right here and right now. Let me hold myself and be present and respond or be with whatever wants to happen right now, without trying to preemptively plan for it or figure out what I'm going to say or do if he does this and if he does that. And if that, it's like you are creating so much tension and anxiety and stress in your body that is pretend. It doesn't exist.
This is literally where I've been. And this is literally what Jamie's been with me on. Carrie, stop. And
I love you. Stop.
Right. But it's so interesting because even in that, when I think of my marriage, I think of how far I've come because in that, I did that then too, obviously, but I would even have it planned and like take it into the marriage conversation. Right. Whereas now, like when I come into a conversation with someone, I might have it all. And like Jamie and I, like literally in this last week, we've had this conversation. Why are you thinking about this? Because I want to know what my things are. Her response to me is, Carrie, what do you need to know? And this is a really great question. What do you need to know about yourself? And so now what I really come home to in these conversations is, what are the things that I need to know that I'm bringing to the conversation, that it's like, what's important to me? Right. What do I need to be able to share that's important to me? Yep. Right. Not about what they are. And as long as I know,
or what they're going to think of it or what.
No, but like what's important for me to express, because this needs to be like something for me that's important. Yeah. Right. Or something that I need, or something that has upset me, or some like boundary that I need to create, whatever that is. Right. Yeah. And I show up. Right.
Like, and I show up knowing
center.
That. Yeah.
And then the conversation, like, we had this conversation, my ex and I had this conversation last night around friendship, and it was really quite a beautiful and easeful conversation. But I can tell you that prior to the conversation, I was literally coming into peace with myself. Like, this was my journey, was like, okay, Carrie, clear your head. Like there's no way that you can predict how this conversation is going to go. So come into your heart, open your heart, be present, and let it be.
I wonder if this is a manifestor thing too, because of where you guys are defined, because I'm just thinking to my other bestie manifestor friend who will literally have whole conversations from beginning to end with someone and make decisions based on this imaginary conversation and never include the other person in the conversation. And then she's like, yeah, he's going to say no, so I'm not even going to ask. And I'm like, but you have just eliminated all potential for the thing you want because you have literally created the whole story before it's ever happened.
Does she have a closed head too?
She must be defined there. I mean, like our manifestors are defined up top because
our own I guess we have to be.
So I wonder if that has to do with that. And I can feel it. It's so interesting because we traveled together recently, and to watch her go into her head and all the stories and and her voice gets higher and her speech gets faster and her this, and I would be like, okay, come back into your body, like ground back into the here and now, right into your root. And then she'd be like, oh, yeah. Like her voice would deepen, her words would slow down, and there was like immediate clarity, like, and then it was like, oh, yeah, I don't like all of that was just chaos. And just to like come back into the now, completely shift everything. And she had some big chaos to navigate. Like she missed a weird airport thing. They said her flight had departed. It hadn't. So she missed her international flight home. Like it was a lot for her traveling and straight into like all the stories and all the things and who's gonna, and it was like, okay. And right now what's happening? What can we do right now? And to watch her go up and then just to be able to say, come back into your body and help like almost immediately, like, oh yeah, none of that. Like I can't do anything about all of these imaginary stories right here and right now. What do I need to do? What do I want? What am I creating? What action can I take? And think about what life would be like if we navigated from that place more often.
Totally.
Right here, right now, what's true? What's real? What do I need? What do I want? What am I creating?
Mm-hmm.
Not what ifs, not what could be. It's so weird the way the mind does that.
Right. So fucking frustrating to be human sometimes.
It is. Yeah.
It is, I mean, like this whole process, and this is why we're talking. I think this is also the point for me talking about it is that over this it's been 4 or 5 weeks now.
Yeah.
I'm getting to the place where it's been like, God, I know mentally what needs to happen. And I'm saying this because I think this is a really important piece, right? I know mentally, like, I know. And in my body, that doesn't change that I'm less human. Yeah. And it doesn't change that the looping thoughts don't happen and those annoying stories don't happen. And it doesn't mean that I'm like
grief happening and that there isn't heartbreak and abandonment and all these things.
Right. Because we're still human.
Yeah.
And so I think this is why I want to say, like, bring this here, because if you're going through any of this, like, and it happened again, like I said, with any shock, with any way that we attach to things outside of ourselves, right? Mm-hmm. And then we need to come back home to ourselves. And this happens all the time. We're human. We're going to keep attaching
to people. This doesn't go away. It just becomes easier to spot and move through, but it does not stop.
Doesn't go away.
Yeah.
That you're where you're supposed to be. Right. I just want to say that, like, you're where you're supposed to be. And I'm saying that because I've had to have my friends tell me, like, doesn't matter how frustrated I am. And even when I talked to my ex last night, I was like, I know that we're going to be in space together because we're in community together and we see each other every week. And there's going to be more processing for me. I'm like, don't take it like it's personal, but it's going to take me time because this is what bodies do.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. And so ultimately, I think to sum up everything that we've said today, because we did kind of go on a bit of a Jamie and Carrie style session here. And I don't know if you have anything else you want to add, actually, but I think we got into a lot of the embodiment things. And ultimately, I totally agree with everything that Jamie has said around our secure attachment and like how we come back to ourselves. And ultimately, it has to come in through the body. We have to reconnect into our bodies. And I'd say if I could, wish it to anyone right? It is to build a connection with your body, however it is that you can. Because I think even for me, and I'm going to even say it this way, like I know when I was anxious in my marriage, I knew I was anxious, but I didn't have the connection to the empowerment to do anything about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And I just felt anxious all the time. And I didn't know why, but I always did. I was always anxious.
Yeah.
Like there was, I mean, I've gone from levels of anxiety where when I first moved to Australia, which would have been my ex-husband and I got together soon after, I was scratching myself till I would bleed.
Yeah.
From like anxiety. Right. Yeah. So when I think about the path I've come to where I am now to actually have this awareness, it's my like milestones. Like I feel the anxiety and I can feel all these things, but it's like, I have the awareness that, okay, it's here and I can do something about this and I'm not going to die. And how do I move this? And it really is like having the connection of what does it need right now? What does your body need right now? What does my heart need right now? What does my mind? What does the little girl inside of me that's really the one that's craving the attention and the love that I get to give to myself, right? Because this is where it is when we come back to our own attachment. It's like, I'm looking outside of me for everything, but really, Carrie.
And you have no control over outside. So of course it creates anxiety because it's like, I need all of you to make me feel safe, but I know I have no control over the choices you make and the things you do. So it's like a looping knowing that I need you to keep me safe, but I know I can't make you do that. I can't
trust you to actually do that because people are going to change. People's lives change. Yeah. Right.
And the way you navigate that is to come back to, I'm responsible for this. And then when you understand the person responsible for your safety is the person you have control over, that changes that anxiety pattern. Because the anxiety comes from not knowing if somebody outside of you is going to show up in the way you need them to.
Right. We just give it to ourselves. And it's been the greatest thing is like anytime not anytime, I won't, because sometimes it is the other person when you are in a relationship, right?
Yes, absolutely.
There is need for we are in a relationship, right?
Yeah.
But oftentimes I will ask myself first, is this something I can give myself?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And when I'm not, it's because I'm definitely in my not self, or it's definitely because I'm in an anxious state. And like, luckily I have beautiful friends and, people around me and even lovers, whatever. They're not going to be mad at me. People who love you aren't going to be mad at you because you go into one of these states, right? Like they're going to love you through it.
Yeah.
But I think it's a really important question that we start to ask ourselves is, what do I need? What do I need to give myself in these moments? And it's not, you can see this on the other side if you're avoidant as well. Right. Yeah. It's not one side or the other, or secure, whatever.
Yeah.
And then we come home to ourselves and we give ourselves what we need. And oftentimes it's going to be to get into that body of yours, move that body of yours in some way, shape or form, express it in some way, shape or form, and do it in a way that's healthy for yourself and for the people around you, please.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, even just to kind of expand on the nuance of someone that loves you that also is self-aware enough to understand what's going on in their body, because like someone can love you very much, but if they don't know how to move their own trauma and regulate their own nervous system, they can want all they want, but their body may not be able to show up in compassion or support if your trigger is triggering them.
Yes.
Which happens a lot in especially romantic relationships.
Yes.
So beautiful, beautiful discussion. Thank you for sharing your journey.
Thank you. Anything else you want to add?
No, I don't think so.
See y'all next week. Let us know what you liked. Reach out. Tell us the things you loved. We'd love to hear from you.
If you enjoyed this show, let us know. We're all about authentic connection, so come chat with us on social media or email. Links are listed in the show notes.
And please make sure to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform and share the magic on your socials.